A thief robbed an elderly woman on the subway without realizing that Keanu Reeves was watching everything. Keanu Reeves had always preferred anonymity. Even after decades of success in Hollywood, he maintained a discreet life away from the spotlight. On an autumn afternoon in Vancouver, his hometown, he decided to visit an old cafe he used to frequent before fame, seeking to reconnect with his roots. The establishment hadn't changed much since his last visit. The same wooden tables, the familiar aroma of freshly ground coffee, and the soft sounds of jazz in the background created a welcoming atmosphere. Wearing a simple hoodie and sunglasses, he sat in a discreet corner, savoring the moment of tranquility. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Stay tuned. It was then that he noticed Amy Chen, a waitress in her 60s, moving between the tables with surprising energy. There was something about her genuine smile and the way she treated every customer that caught his attention. When she approached to take his order, Keanu noticed that her hands were trembling slightly. "Black coffee, please," he requested, keeping his voice low. Amy looked at him a bit longer than necessary, as if trying to remember something. Her face lit up with a smile of recognition, but to Keanu's surprise, not for the reason he had imagined. "You remind me so much of my son," she said with a soft accent. "He always orders black coffee too." Keanu smiled, relieved not to be recognized as the movie star. Something in the simplicity of that moment touched him deeply. In the days that followed, Keanu began visiting the cafe regularly. Always at the same time, always served by Amy. Through casual conversations, he discovered that she had been working there for 30 years, single-handedly supporting her son, who was studying medicine in Toronto. Her hands trembled due to a neurological condition, but she refused to stop working. During his visits, Keanu observed how Amy transformed a simple cup of coffee into a special experience for every customer. She memorized the preferences of the regulars, shared encouraging words with stressed students, and always found time to listen to the elderly who came seeking companionship. One day, while signing the contract for his next film, an idea began to form in his mind. The script was about human connections and second chances, but something was missing. In the margins of the paper, he started making notes about a character, a resilient waitress who changed people's lives through small acts of kindness. That night, upon returning to the cafe, Keanu noticed that Amy seemed more tired than usual. Her tremors were more pronounced, and she had knocked over a few cups. The other employees exchanged worried glances, but she kept smiling and apologizing. "It's all right," she insisted. "I just need to focus a little more." That was when Keanu realized he needed to do something, not as a movie star, but as someone who had been touched by the genuine kindness of this woman. He knew Amy would never accept charity, but perhaps there was another way to help. As he left the cafe that night, he called his agent. "Remember that script we were discussing? I think I've found our story." What he didn't know was that his decision would trigger a series of events that would change not only Amy's life, but also his own understanding of the true meaning of success. In the following weeks, Keanu worked discreetly with the screenwriters to incorporate elements of Amy's story into the film. The character of the waitress was expanded, becoming central to the narrative. He wanted to capture not only her actions, but the essence of how small acts of kindness could create waves of transformation. The challenge was to keep Amy's identity anonymous while developing the project. Keanu continued visiting the cafe regularly, now with a more attentive eye to the details that made her presence so special. He watched how she folded napkins with extra care for an elderly customer with arthritis, how she saved extra cookies for students who seemed to have not eaten properly. During one of these visits, Amy shared more of her story. Her son, David, was in his final year of medical school and planned to specialize in neurology, inspired by his mother's condition. "He wants to help people like me," she said proudly, "but sometimes I worry that I'm overworking myself to pay for his studies." The film production began to take shape. The studio was enthusiastic about the new direction of the script, though they had no idea that the inspiration came from a small cafe in Vancouver. Keanu insisted on filming in the city, claiming that the local atmosphere was essential to the story. One day, while talking with Amy, she mentioned that her tremors were worsening. The doctor had suggested she reduce her working hours, but she refused. "There are only 6 months left until David graduates," she explained. "I can hold on." Until then. That night, Keanu had an idea. The film needed consultants to ensure the authenticity of the cafe scenes. Why not hire someone with real experience? Through his agent, he arranged for Amy to be invited as a technical consultant, without revealing her involvement. The proposal came through the cafe manager. The studio offered a generous salary for a few hours of consulting per week, allowing Amy to reduce her working hours without compromising her income. Initially, she hesitated, but the idea of contributing to a film intrigued her. "I never thought that my experience serving coffee could interest Hollywood," she remarked to Keanu, not knowing he was responsible. Her smile was radiant as she described how she had taught actors the proper way to balance a tray. The film began to come to life, and with it, a subtle transformation was taking place. The production crew frequented the cafe regularly, enchanted by the atmosphere that had inspired the story. Amy blossomed in her role as a consultant, her tips and observations enriching every scene. Keanu observed everything with quiet satisfaction. But the real test was yet to come. Soon filming would begin, and keeping his involvement in Amy's story a secret would become even more challenging. An unexpected letter from David, Amy's son, was about to add a new layer of complexity to the situation. David's letter arrived on a rainy Vancouver morning. Amy shared it with Keanu during his usual visit to the cafe, her eyes welling with emotion. In the letter, her son revealed that he had been selected for a prestigious neurology residency program, but the process of relocating and settling in Toronto would require financial resources they did not have. "He wants me to stop working," Amy confided, her hands trembling more than usual as she held the letter. "David found out about my involvement as a consultant on the film and is worried that I'm overexerting myself. He says he'd rather postpone the residency than see me like this." Those words hit Keanu deeply. The plan to help Amy through the consulting work was not enough. He needed to do more, but without compromising her dignity and pride. Filming was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks. The script, now finalized, had transformed the character inspired by Amy into one of the main emotional forces of the story. Sandra Bullock, who had been cast to play the role, was eager to meet the inspiration behind her character. It was during a pre-production meeting that Keanu had an idea. The film needed real locations, and authenticity was crucial to the story. Why not transform Amy's cafe into the main setting? The payment for using the space could be the solution that David and Amy needed. However, before he could implement his plan, an unexpected event changed everything. During one of the consulting sessions, Amy finally recognized Keanu, not from his films or his fame, but for something much more significant. "You're the guy from the black coffee," she said, with a smile of understanding. "All this time, it was you who organized everything, wasn't it?" The moment of revelation was delicate. Amy did not show anger over the omission, but a deep curiosity about Keanu's motives. He explained how her natural kindness and dedication had inspired changes in the script, transforming an ordinary story into something truly special. "You remind me so much of my late husband," Amy revealed, surprising Keanu. He also believed that small acts of kindness could change the world. Before he passed, he made me promise that I would never lose that faith in humanity. The conversation lasted for hours. Amy shared stories about her life, about how working at the cafe had become her way of honoring her late husband's memory, turning every cup of coffee into an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of the production, Sandra Bullock had arrived in town. Upon learning the real story behind her character, she insisted on meeting Amy in person, not just as part of her preparation for the role, but out of genuine interest in her story. The meeting between the two women was memorable. Sandra, known for her own empathetic nature, connected immediately with Amy. For hours, they talked about resilience, love, and the importance of maintaining kindness in an increasingly fast-paced world. What no one knew was that this meeting would trigger a series of events that would transcend everyone's expectations. A surprise was being prepared behind the scenes, something that would unite the world of cinema with reality in a way no one could have predicted. News that the cafe would be the main setting of the film caused quite a stir in the neighborhood. The small establishment, already a beloved gathering spot in the community, now took on an entirely new dimension. The production offered a generous contract for the use of the space, including a complete renovation that would preserve the essence of the place while improving its facilities. Amy, initially reluctant to all the attention, found an unexpected ally in Sandra Bullock. The actress, impressed by the story behind the film, suggested a revolutionary idea: to transform part of the cafe into a training center for people with physical challenges who wanted to work in the hospitality industry. Keanu, observing the development of this friendship, realized that his initial plan had evolved into something much bigger than he could have imagined. The film was no longer just a story about kindness and human connections. It was becoming a catalyst for real change. David, Amy's son, arrived in Vancouver for a surprise visit. Seeing the transformations underway and, most importantly, the new sparkle in his mother's eyes, he understood that his fears about her health were only part of the story. The work he had feared was harming her was, in fact, her source of strength and purpose. Filming began, transforming the routine of the cafe. Amy, now not only a consultant, but an integral part of the production, started sharing her wisdom with the cast and crew. Her presence on set brought an authenticity that no script could replicate. Sandra Bullock, diving deeply into her role, began to incorporate the small gestures and mannerisms of Amy. The connection between the two women grew each day, transcending the actress-inspiration relationship to become a genuine friendship. One day, during a break in filming, Keanu found Amy sitting alone at the cafe counter, watching the crew's movements. Her tremors were more controlled now. The new reduced schedule and the medical treatment she could finally afford were making a difference. "You know," she said, "when my husband passed away, I thought my story was over, that my role would be just to carry on, day after day. But now I realize that every cup of coffee I served, every smile I shared, was part of a larger story." Keanu smiled, understanding perfectly what she meant. His own journey as an actor had always been marked by the search for stories that transcended mere entertainment, stories that touched people in a deep and meaningful way. The film's production progressed, but something even greater was developing. Behind the scenes, Sandra and Keanu, inspired by Amy's story, began developing a side project, a foundation that would offer scholarships to children of service workers, inspired by David's journey. The impact of Amy's story began to spread beyond the limits of Vancouver. Journalists discovered the real inspiration behind the film, and soon the small cafe became a symbol of something larger, a reminder of how small acts of kindness can generate waves of transformation. While the cameras captured the film's scenes, the true magic was happening in the moments between takes. Production staff, actors, and crew began adopting the gestures of kindness they had learned from Amy. The set, normally a high-stress environment, transformed into a space of genuine connections. The film's premiere was approaching, and Vancouver buzzed with anticipation. The small cafe, now renovated yet retaining its original charm, had become an informal tourist spot. People from all over the country visited the place, hoping to experience a bit of the magic that had inspired the production. Amy continued working, now only part-time, supervising the new training program she and Sandra had developed. Her neurological condition, though still present, was more controlled thanks to proper treatment. David had managed to start his residency in Toronto, comforted by knowing that his mother was not only well but thriving. One morning, while setting the tables for the day, Amy found an envelope left by Keanu. Inside was an old photo, a young, unknown actor sitting at the cafe counter 15 years earlier. On the back, a handwritten message. "You probably don't remember, but that day I was about to give up on acting. Your words of encouragement, even to a stranger, made me keep going." The memories slowly returned. A quiet young man, disheartened after yet another failed audition. Amy had noticed his dejection, and while serving his coffee, shared a story about how her own husband had never given up on his dreams, even in the toughest times. "Sometimes," she had said, "we only need a cup of coffee and someone who believes in us." The film's impact began to manifest in unexpected ways. Cafes in different cities started adopting practices inspired by Amy's story. Training programs for people with physical challenges emerged in various establishments. The Cafe and Dreams Foundation, created by Sandra and Keanu, had already awarded its first scholarships. Sandra Bullock, deeply transformed by the experience, began visiting the cafe regularly whenever she was in Vancouver. She and Amy developed a ritual of having coffee together on Sunday mornings, sharing stories and laughter. The actress often remarked how the role had changed her perspective on the importance of small moments of human connection. One day, during one of those Sunday mornings, a young waitress approached their table. With trembling hands due to a condition similar to Amy's, she shared how the film's story had given her the courage to seek employment, despite her physical limitations. Amy, tears in her eyes, got up and embraced her. The media continued to be interested in the story, but not for the usual Hollywood reasons. It wasn't the celebrities that attracted attention, but the tangible impact the narrative was having in real life. Articles and reports highlighted how a simple act of kindness had sparked a wave of social transformation. Keanu, remaining discreet, as ever continued to visit the cafe regularly. Now, however, he no longer needed to hide. The regular customers treated him like family, respecting his space and privacy. He often sat in the same spot as years ago, watching Amy train new employees with the same patience and dedication as always. The film was about to premiere, but the true story, one that unfolded daily in the cafe, continued to develop in surprising and touching ways. A special celebration was being planned, one that would unite past and present, cinema and reality, in a way no one could have predicted. The premiere night in Vancouver was very different from typical Hollywood premieres. Instead of a traditional theater, the film was shown in an outdoor cinema set up in the park near the cafe. Amy insisted that the event be open to the public, especially to the neighborhood residents who had been part of that journey. The cafe, illuminated by hundreds of small lights, served as a meeting point before the screening. Old and new customers, production staff, actors, and community members mingled, sharing stories about how that small establishment had touched their lives. David surprised his mother by arriving early for the event. Alongside him was a group of his fellow residents from the hospital in Toronto. They had created a community neurology care program inspired by Amy's story, offering affordable treatment for people with conditions similar to hers. Upon arriving, Sandra Bullock went straight to embrace Amy. The actress wasn't wearing makeup or glamorous clothes. She was dressed like her character from the film, complete with the signature cafe apron. "Tonight," she said, "I'm just another part of your story." Keanu remained discreet for most of the event, watching with satisfaction how his initial idea had blossomed into something much greater than a film. When he finally addressed the audience, his words were simple yet profound. "Sometimes we think we need grand gestures to change the world. Amy showed us that all we need is a cup of coffee and an open heart." The film began screening at dusk. The story on the screen was familiar to many in the audience, but seeing it come to life through cinematic art brought a new dimension of emotion. Scenes filmed in the cafe elicited knowing smiles, and Sandra's sensitive performance perfectly captured the essence of Amy. During the screening, something special started to happen. People in the audience began sharing coffee and cookies, spontaneously replicating the acts of kindness they had learned from Amy. Strangers chatted like old friends, united by the magic of that moment. After the film, Amy took the small, improvised stage. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the microphone, but her voice was steady. She didn't speak about the film or her own story. Instead, she asked everyone present to commit to performing one small act of kindness the following day. That night, the Cafe and Dreams Foundation announced its expansion. In addition to scholarships, it would now include a microfinancing program for small establishments that wanted to implement inclusive training programs similar to Amy's cafe. The next day, the cafe opened as usual, just like always. Amy was there serving coffee and sharing smiles. Keanu took his usual place at the counter. Sandra appeared for breakfast, and the regular customers maintained their routines. On the surface, nothing had changed, but something was different. Every cup of coffee served carried a story of transformation. Every smile shared was an echo of the impact that small gestures could have. The cafe had become more than just a film set or a commercial establishment. It was a living reminder that genuine kindness has the power to transcend any barrier. And so, while the film continued its journey around the world, touching hearts and inspiring change, the true magic kept happening every day in that small cafe in Vancouver. Amy, Keanu, Sandra, and everyone involved had created something that went beyond entertainment. They had shown that sometimes the most important stories are not written in scripts, but in the small moments of human connection we share with one another.